You know how families are supposed to have your back? Well, mine didn't. When my daughter's Sweet 16 came around, they called it just a kid's party and laughed when I asked for help. But the second I refused to bankroll their big plans, they lost it. They didn't just yell or guilt trip me. They actually called the police to my house like I was some kind of criminal. That was the day I realized blood doesn't always mean loyalty. For most of my life, I thought family arguments were just noise you put up with. We'd fight, roll our eyes, and then show up again for the next birthday or holiday, pretending nothing happened. That was the rhythm I grew up in, the kind of cycle where you're taught not to make waves. And for a long time, I convinced myself it was normal. When my daughter was little, they barely showed up. A quick text on her birthday, maybe a toy if they happened to pass by. I told myself it was fine. Kids don't need a crowd of relatives to feel loved, just consistency. But when she turned 15, something shifted. Suddenly, my family decided they cared. Not about her, not really, but about the show of it. They started talking about how the Sweet 16 is such a milestone, and how everyone does something big. At first, I thought it was nice. They were finally paying attention. They suggested venues, decorations, even who should be invited. It sounded supportive, until the conversations always circled back to one thing: money. My money. See, my family has always had this unspoken rule. If someone stands their ground, the rest of them pile on. They call it tradition, but it's really just manipulation dressed up as culture. They'll tell you it's selfish to put your own needs first. They'll remind you of everything they've ever done for you, even if it's something as small as letting you crash on a couch 20 years ago. And if you resist, suddenly you're the villain. That's exactly how it started with my daughter's birthday. They called her earlier parties just kid stuff. Nothing worth celebrating, nothing worth effort. But a Sweet 16? That was their chance to make it about them. They wanted the photos, the speeches, the bragging rights. And they wanted me to foot the bill. I tried to play along at first. I listened to their ideas about hiring a DJ, renting a banquet hall, even getting a limousine. The numbers they threw around made me dizzy. Thousands of dollars for one night. Money I simply didn't have to waste. When I gently said no, they laughed like I was joking. When I insisted, they turned cold. I could feel the shift every time we talked. They stopped asking how my daughter was doing in school. They stopped mentioning her interests, her friends, her dreams. Instead, every conversation became about logistics. Have you booked the place yet? Did you talk to the caterer? You don't want her to be embarrassed, do you? And every time, I felt this knot in my chest tighten. Because I wasn't saying no to my daughter. I was saying no to them. And I knew, sooner or later, they'd make me pay for it. At that point, I had no idea just how far they'd go. I thought it would be guilt trips, cold shoulders, maybe a screaming match at a family dinner. I was wrong. What happened next made me realize that my biggest mistake wasn't refusing to fund a party. It was expecting my family to respect my boundaries at all. The first real crack showed up on a Sunday afternoon. We'd all gathered at my parents' house. One of those obligatory family dinners where everyone pretends we're closer than we actually are. My mom had cooked too much food, as always, and everyone was talking over each other. My daughter sat beside me, poking at her plate, half bored but polite. That's when my sister brought it up, loud enough for the whole table to hear. So, have you booked the hall yet? You know Sweet 16s get reserved months in advance. I froze with my fork halfway to my mouth. I had already told them, more than once, that I wasn't paying for a hall, or a limo, or anything that belonged in a reality TV episode. But she asked as if we'd never had that conversation. I forced a smile. We're keeping it simple. Something at home with her friends. She doesn't even want a big crowd. The table went quiet for a beat too long. Then my brother chuckled, shaking his head. Come on, man. Don't cheap out on your own kid. It's her Sweet 16. It's once in a lifetime. The knot in my chest twisted. I glanced at my daughter, who gave me this tiny, embarrassed shrug. She hadn't asked for a hall. She hadn't asked for a limo. All she wanted was a small gathering with her closest friends, a cake she liked, and maybe some music in the backyard. But none of that mattered to them. My mother leaned in, her voice sharp. You can't embarrass her like this. People will think you don't care. Families talk, neighbors talk. Do you want that reputation? That word, embarrass, hit me harder than I expected. They weren't worried about my daughter's happiness. They were worried about their image. About what people would whisper if my daughter didn't have the kind of party they could brag about. I'm not spending thousands on one night, I said, this time firmer. She's happy with what we've planned. That's all that matters. My sister rolled her eyes, muttering just loud enough. Yeah, until she realizes her dad made her miss out on the party of her life. That one stung, not because I believed it, but because I could feel my daughter stiffen beside me. She hated the spotlight, but now the entire table was staring at her, silently waiting for her to agree or disagree. She mumbled something about liking small parties, then stared down at her plate, cheeks red. It should have ended there. A difference of opinion, a tense dinner, another silent car ride home. But my family doesn't do silent endings. They do escalation. My father cleared his throat and said, almost ceremonially, "If you can't do it, maybe we all chip in. But you should lead, of course. You're her parent. It's your duty." I knew what that meant. They'd toss in a token amount and leave me holding the rest of the bill. It was a trap dressed up as generosity. Something inside me snapped. I said no. I said sharper this time. Stop making this about you. This is her day, not yours. The silence that followed wasn't ordinary. It was the kind of silence that made your skin prickle, like the whole room had turned against you. My daughter grabbed my hand under the table, squeezing it so tightly her knuckles turned white. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just about a party. This was a power play, and I had just refused to play along. But I had no idea how far they were willing to take it. A week after that dinner, things started to feel off. My phone rang more often, but it wasn't just casual check-ins. It was reminders. My mom would call in the middle of the day, her tone deceptively sweet. "So, any progress on the party? Did you put down a deposit yet?" When I repeated that we were keeping it small, her sigh would echo through the phone like I'd just confessed to a crime. "You'll regret this," she muttered once, almost under her breath. At first, I tried to brush it off. Maybe they were just being pushy, maybe it would blow over. But then I noticed my daughter's mood shifting. She came home from school one day with her lips pressed tight, her backpack slipping off one shoulder. "They asked me why my dad isn't throwing a sweet 16, she said quietly, dumping her books on the table. I frowned. "Who did?" "Cousin Jenny. She said Grandma told her it's weird we're not doing anything big. She said you probably can't afford it." The shame in her voice cut deeper than anything my family had said to me. I could take their jabs, but they'd crossed a line dragging my daughter into it. Suddenly, it wasn't just manipulation, it was sabotage. They were planting seeds in her head, trying to make her doubt me. That night, I checked our family group chat, something I usually ignored because it was mostly chain memes and passive-aggressive comments. But what I saw made my stomach twist. A thread of messages between my siblings. "Can you believe he's really not going to do it? Poor girl, she'll hate him for it later. We might have to step in if he won't." Step in. The words felt loaded, like a threat. The next few days were filled with subtle digs that piled up like pebbles in my shoe. My brother joked in front of neighbors. "Hey, don't expect a party invite. Apparently birthdays aren't important in his house." He laughed, but his eyes weren't laughing. At work, I even got a call from my sister, at my desk, in the middle of the afternoon. "You're really gonna let her go without?" she said, voice sharp. "What kind of message is that for a young woman? Don't you care about her future?" Her future, as if the lack of $1,000 party was going to ruin her life. The breaking point, though, came on a Thursday night. I was taking out the trash when I spotted a folded piece of paper tucked under my windshield wiper. At first, I thought it was a flyer, but it was a handwritten note. "If you can't take care of her, maybe someone else should." No name, no signature, just those words, in handwriting I recognized all too well. My mother's. I stood there in the driveway, trash bag dangling at my side, heart hammering. The neighborhood was dark and quiet, but suddenly I felt watched. They weren't just gossiping. They weren't just guilt-tripping. They were escalating, making it clear they thought they had the right to intervene in how I raised my own daughter. That should have been my first red flag. Because if they thought notes and gossip were fair game, I had no idea what they'd try next. It happened late on a Friday night, just when I thought things might finally be calming down. My daughter had a couple of friends over. They were laughing in the living room, music playing low. For a brief moment, it felt normal. The kind of evening you hope for when you're raising a teenager. Safe, cozy, full of small joy. Then my phone buzzed. A notification from the family group chat. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something in me said to look. The first message was from my sister. "Tomorrow is the day. Don't let him screw it up." My stomach sank. I scrolled up and saw the rest of the thread. They'd been planning behind my back. Actual logistics, not just talk. "If he won't book it, we can make a call. He'll fold when he sees we're serious. All it takes is one report, and he'll have no choice. I read those lines over and over, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear the music anymore. One report. A report of what? What could they possibly think they had on me? I didn't have to wonder long. A photo popped up in the chat. My house. Taken from outside, through the blinds, with the caption, "Not exactly party ready, huh?" I felt sick. My hands trembled so badly, I almost dropped the phone. They had been outside my house, watching, taking pictures like stalkers. Then my brother chimed in. If he wants to play hardball, we'll call CPS. Say he can't provide. That'll shut him up. CPS. Child Protective Services. My entire body went cold. I stared at the words, my throat tightening. These were my siblings. My parents. The same people who once held my daughter as a baby, cooing over her. The same people who claimed they wanted the best for her. Now they were openly discussing weaponizing the system against me. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I wouldn't fund their idea of a party. I stumbled into the kitchen, away from the laughter in the living room, and gripped the counter until my knuckles went white. I could barely breathe. My mind kept repeating the same phrase. They would take her from me. They'd actually do it. I wanted to believe it was just empty threats, but the photos proved otherwise. They weren't just talking. They were already crossing lines. For the next hour, I couldn't sit still. I paced the kitchen, reread the thread until the words blurred. I even opened the front door twice, scanning the street, half expecting to see one of their cars idling nearby. My chest felt tight, like a weight was pressing down. Finally, I screenshotted everything. Every message, every photo. My fingers were shaking so hard I had to redo it 3 times. I sent them to my personal email, then backed them up to a cloud folder. Because deep down, I knew, if they were willing to play dirty, I had to be ready for the worst. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to my daughter breathe softly down the hall. Every creak of the house made me jump. My mind kept looping the image of those blinds, the camera flash I hadn't noticed. Someone standing outside, recording proof that they were circling closer. And then came the kicker. Around 2 a.m., my phone lit up again. A private message from my mother. Just one sentence. "You'll regret this more than you know." I dropped the phone onto the nightstand like it burned me. My chest ached with a mix of rage and fear, my head spinning. This wasn't just guilt tripping anymore. It was war. And I realized, with a clarity that cut through the haze, I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't imagining things. My family had declared me the enemy. What I didn't know yet was how far they'd push, and how public they'd make it. 2 days after that sleepless night, I found the proof I didn't even know I was looking for. It wasn't a text or a call this time. It was a knock at the door on a quiet Monday afternoon. My daughter was at school, and I was working from home, trying to calm my nerves with spreadsheets and coffee. When the knock came, sharp and insistent, my first thought was delivery. But when I opened the door, 2 people stood there holding clipboards. They introduced themselves as Family Services. My stomach dropped so fast I had to grab the edge of the doorframe. They were polite, almost apologetic, explaining they'd received a concerned report about my daughter's welfare. "It's probably nothing," one of them said, "but we're required to check." It was surreal, like stepping into someone else's nightmare. I invited them in, trying to keep my voice steady, but my hands were trembling. They asked to see her room, asked about her meals, her medical care, even checked the fridge. I answered everything truthfully, but inside I was boiling. As they left, one of them handed me a card. "This is just a preliminary visit," she said softly. "If anything else comes up, we'll be in touch." I stood at the door watching their car pull away, the card damp in my sweaty palm. My chest was tight, my jaw aching from clenching it. They'd actually done it. They hadn't just threatened. They'd made a false report about their own granddaughter. I went straight to my email, pulling up the screenshots again, fingers flying across the keyboard. I matched timestamps, compared messages, pieced it together. The group chat from Friday. The CPS visit on Monday. The same words, one report, now turned into a knock at my door. It wasn't just manipulation anymore. It was a coordinated smear campaign. They were trying to build a case, to paint me as unfit, to corner me until I either paid for the party or lost my daughter entirely. That realization hit me like a wave of ice water. This wasn't about my daughter's sweet 16 at all. This was about control. About punishing me for stepping out of line, for saying no. My hands shook as I opened my banking app. There were small, unexplained withdrawals from my joint account with my mother, an old account I'd left open years ago when she helped me buy my first car. I hadn't touched it in years, but she still had access. They'd been draining money, not huge amounts, but enough to make me panic when I saw the total. I clicked through transaction histories, my mind racing. Venue deposits, caterer names, all in my name, all paid from my account without my consent. They weren't just threatening me. They were using my money to build the very event I refused to fund. I felt a surge of nausea so strong I had to sit down. My hands were ice cold. My heart thudded against my ribs. For a moment, all I could hear was my own breathing, ragged and shallow. In that instant, everything crystallized. They were trying to bankrupt me, discredit me, and isolate me from my own daughter, all under the banner of family. I looked at the stack of evidence I'd collected, screenshots, bank statements, the business cards from the caseworkers, and I understood something I hadn't before. This wasn't going to end with a few angry texts or a canceled party. This was going to end with me either broken or fighting back. And for the first time in weeks, instead of fear, I felt a flicker of something else, resolve. But I still didn't know just how far they'd go to push me over the edge. That night, after my daughter went to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen with nothing but the hum of the refrigerator for company. The stack of evidence was spread across the table like a crime board, screenshots printed out, the CPS card, the bank statements. I stared at them until the numbers and words blurred into one angry smear of ink. Sleep wasn't an option. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those two caseworkers standing in my doorway, polite but suspicious. I imagined my daughter coming home to find strangers in our house, asking questions she didn't understand. I pictured her being pulled aside, interrogated, made to doubt me. The thought made my stomach churn. I gripped my coffee mug so tightly my knuckles hurt. My mind was split in two. One voice whispered, "Just give in. Pay for the damn party. It'll end this madness." The other voice, quieter but steadier, said, "If you give in now, they'll own you forever. They'll know you can be broken." That was the real dilemma. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about boundaries, the one thing my family had never respected. If I caved, it would set the tone for everything else. My daughter's future, my own dignity. But the alternative terrified me. Fighting them meant escalation. More lies, more reports, maybe even legal battles. I imagined lawyers, judges, custody hearings. All because I said no to a party. I pressed my palms into my eyes, trying to block it all out. But the silence only made my thoughts louder. I felt trapped in a loop, swinging between fear and fury, between wanting peace at any cost and wanting justice no matter the price. By dawn, I knew there was no middle ground left. I couldn't buy my way out of this. I had to confront it. And for the first time, instead of waiting for their next move, I started to plan mine. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache but a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. Enough was enough. If my family wanted to drag me through the mud, then I needed to build my armor, proof, boundaries, backup. The first thing I did was call the bank. I sat on hold for nearly an hour, tapping my pen against the table, until a rep finally confirmed what I already knew. Yes, charges had been made to event services in my name from that old joint account. Yes, they could see it was unusual activity. And yes, the account would be frozen immediately. Hearing those words, account frozen, felt like a small victory. Like I had finally shut one door they couldn't keep barging through. Next, I called a lawyer. Not a high-priced shark, just a family attorney a friend recommended. I explained the situation as calmly as I could, but even saying the words out loud made me feel like I was narrating some twisted movie. My relatives had filed a false CPS report. They were draining my accounts. They were threatening to ruin me over a party. The lawyer didn't laugh. He didn't look shocked. He just nodded and said, "Document everything. Every call, every message. If they contact CPS again, we'll file for harassment." So I did. I spent hours compiling a digital folder, labeling each piece of evidence. The screenshots, the bank records, the note under my windshield. Even my mother's midnight message, "You'll regret this more than you know." By the time my daughter came home from school, I felt lighter, almost optimistic. I cooked her favorite dinner, tried to bring back some normalcy. We laughed, we watched a movie, and for a few hours I allowed myself to believe the worst was over. But the calm didn't last. That night, just as I was shutting off the lights, my phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Too late to play the victim. We're not done. No name. No context. Just that message, glowing on my screen in the dark. My throat went dry. I screenshotted it immediately, but a sick realization washed over me. This wasn't going away. Blocking accounts, freezing money, even hiring a lawyer. None of it would stop them if they were determined to crush me. I thought I had taken the first step toward ending it. But really, I had just declared open war. For a brief stretch of days, things almost felt normal again. My phone was quieter. The group chat slowed down to meaningless jokes and photos of meals. My daughter even said, maybe they finally gave up. I wanted to believe her. I wanted so badly to believe that freezing the account, hiring the lawyer, and standing my ground had finally broken whatever twisted obsession they had with this party. So I leaned into the illusion. We planned a simple celebration, a backyard barbecue, a rented canopy, string lights across the fence. My daughter picked the playlist herself. Her friends offered to help with decorations. It was exactly the kind of small, joyful gathering she had asked for from the very beginning. For the first time in weeks, I caught myself exhaling. I smiled more, slept better, even dared to think, maybe we'll get through this. The night before the party, I stood in the yard stringing up lights, listening to my daughter laugh with her best friend in the kitchen. The sound felt like a reward, like proof I had chosen the right path. I even texted my lawyer. Looks like they've backed off. Thank you. But deep down, a sliver of unease lingered. The silence from my family didn't feel like surrender. It felt like calculation. And as I set the last light into place, my phone buzzed with a new notification. A message I almost didn't want to open. It wasn't from my lawyer. It wasn't from a friend. It was from an unknown number again. See you tomorrow. The morning of my daughter's birthday started beautifully. The sun was out, the backyard smelled faintly of fresh-cut grass, and the decorations swayed gently in the breeze. She was buzzing with excitement, darting around the house with her friends, giggling as they set up balloons and tested the speakers. For the first time in weeks, she looked like a normal teenager, happy, carefree, exactly how she deserved to feel on her special day. I let myself breathe. Maybe the ominous text from the night before was just another empty scare. Maybe, finally, we'd get through this without a scene. That illusion lasted until about 4 p.m., when the first cars pulled up to the curb. Not her friend's parents, not neighbors dropping off gifts, but my family. My parents, my siblings, even a couple of cousins I hadn't seen in years. All dressed up, carrying gift bags, marching down my driveway as if they owned the place. My stomach twisted. They hadn't been invited. I hadn't told them the time, the place, nothing. Yet here they were, smiling like guests of honor. My mother breezed past me at the door, setting a wrapped box on the table. We couldn't let her down, she said loudly, glancing around so everyone could hear. Someone had to make this a real sweet 16. My daughter froze, a paper plate in her hand. Her friends exchanged uneasy looks. I felt heat crawling up my neck. You weren't invited, I said firmly. This is her party, not yours. But they ignored me, fanning out through the house, hugging my daughter, commenting on decorations. My father muttered something about doing it properly, while my sister whispered in my daughter's ear, "Don't worry, we'll take care of you. We know you wanted more than this." That was the knife twist. My daughter looked at me, eyes wide and uncertain, as if she didn't know who to believe. I pulled her aside, my voice low. You told me you wanted small. Backyard, friends, music. That's what this is. Don't let them rewrite it. She nodded, but the tension in her shoulders told me the damage was already done. And then came the real blow. At 5 p.m., just as the grill fired up, 2 police cruisers rolled slowly down the street and stopped right in front of my house. The entire yard went silent. Kids froze mid-laugh. Parents exchanged nervous glances. My daughter's face drained of color. 2 officers stepped out, their expressions neutral but professional. We got a call, one of them said, about underage drinking and a potentially unsafe environment for minors. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. I staggered forward, shaking my head. That's impossible. There's no alcohol here. You can look yourselves. My family stood clustered near the fence, watching, and I swear I saw my sister smirk. The officers did a quick walkthrough. They checked the coolers, soda, juice, nothing else. They looked around the yard, at the decorations, at the kids playing music games. No evidence of anything illegal. But the embarrassment was already complete. Neighbors peeked from windows. Parents whispered. My daughter stood frozen, her eyes glossy with humiliation. When the officers finally left, one of them leaned close and muttered, "This happens more than you think. Some families weaponize us. Keep documenting everything." I nodded numbly, my throat tight. The second the cruisers drove off, my mother clapped her hands together, fake bright. "Well, now that the drama's over, let's get this party going, shall we?" I snapped. "Get out. All of you. Now." The yard went dead quiet. My father's jaw tightened. "You don't speak to your mother like that. Get out." My voice shook, but not from fear. From fury. "You called the police to my house. You humiliated your own granddaughter. You don't belong here." My daughter slipped her hand into mine, gripping it like she was clinging to a lifeline. That was all the confirmation I needed. But as they filed out, slow, defiant, like they were the wronged ones, I knew this wasn't the end. The looks on their faces promised more, and I realized something chilling. I had underestimated them every step of the way. They weren't just trying to ruin a birthday. They were trying to ruin me. That night, after everyone left and the last balloon deflated in the corner, I sat alone in the backyard staring at the string lights swaying above me. The laughter of teenagers had faded into silence hours ago. My daughter was in her room with the door shut, and the weight of that closed door crushed me more than anything my family had done. I replayed the whole day in my head. The uninvited arrival, the whispers, the police cars parked outside my house for the whole neighborhood to see. I couldn't shake the image of my daughter's face when the officers spoke. Pale, lips pressed together, fighting tears. That was supposed to be her day. Instead, my family had turned it into a public humiliation. The shame burned so deeply it almost felt physical. I wondered if she blamed me, if she thought I hadn't done enough to protect her. Because the truth was, I hadn't. I'd underestimated them, convinced myself they wouldn't go as far as they did. And now my daughter had paid the price. My phone buzzed again that evening. Another message from my sister. "See? Everyone saw it. Next time, just listen to us. You made this harder than it needed to be." I stared at the words until they blurred, my jaw clenching so tightly it hurt. My chest ached with a mix of fury and exhaustion. They weren't even hiding it anymore. They thought they had won. And for a moment, I believed it too. I felt broken, drained, powerless. Like no matter what I did, they'd always find a way to twist the knife. Maybe this was my life now. Constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next report, the next knock at the door. I poured myself a glass of water and nearly dropped it because my hands were shaking so badly. My breath came shallow, uneven. My mind whispered the same poisonous thought on repeat. You can't win against them. But then I heard movement upstairs. My daughter's door opened, her footsteps soft on the stairs. She walked into the kitchen, eyes puffy from crying, but she didn't say a word. She just hugged me, tight, fierce, like she was telling me without words, "You're still my dad. I'm still with you." That hug cut through the fog like sunlight. It reminded me what this was really about. Not them, not their games, not even my pride. It was about protecting her, her peace, her future, her sense of safety. I pulled back, looked her in the eye, and said quietly, "I promise you this ends now. They don't get to hurt us again." She nodded, wiping her eyes, and went back upstairs. And as I sat there in the dim kitchen, something inside me shifted. I was done being on the defensive. If my family wanted war, then I would give them one, but on my terms. I woke up the next morning with the kind of clarity that comes after you've already hit bottom. There was nothing left to lose. My family had humiliated me in front of neighbors, scared my daughter, even called the police to my door. I wasn't going to wait for the next attack. It was time to end it. First thing, I gathered everything. The screenshots of their threats, the bank withdrawals, the note under my windshield, the CPS card, even the text from my sister bragging that I should have just listened. I printed it all out, organized it in a folder, and then made 3 digital backups. If they wanted a fight, I'd make sure I came armed with truth. Then I made the call. Not to them, not to a lawyer, not yet. I called a cousin I actually trusted, someone on the edge of family drama, but with enough credibility that people listened to him. I asked him to stop by my house that evening, told him it was important. He agreed, though his voice carried that familiar hesitation, like he didn't want to be pulled into our mess. By 6 p.m., he was at my kitchen table, arms crossed. "All right," he said, "what's going on?" I slid the folder toward him. "Read." At first, his face was neutral. Then his eyebrows pulled together, his lips tightening as he flipped through the pages. By the time he got to the screenshots about calling CPS, his head was shaking. They actually sent people here? He asked, voice low. Yes. On her birthday. He leaned back, silent for a moment, then muttered, They're out of their minds. Exactly. And now I had someone else who could confirm it. That was when I made my decision. If they wanted this public, I'd make it public. The following Sunday, they had their usual big family dinner at my parents' house. I showed up with my daughter, folder in hand. The second we walked in, the room went quiet. They hadn't expected me to come. My mother forced a smile, reaching for a hug I didn't return. I dropped the folder on the table. Go ahead, I said. Read it. All of you. Confusion rippled through the room. My father frowned. My siblings exchanged glances. Finally, my sister picked it up and skimmed the first page. Her face drained of color. That's private, she snapped, slamming it shut. No, I said, my voice sharp. Private is what you do in your own lives. This was harassment. False reports. Theft. Stalking my house. You called the police to my daughter's birthday. That stopped being private the second you tried to ruin us. The room erupted. My mother cried that I was twisting things. My father muttered that I was disrespectful. My siblings tried to shout over each other, excuses tumbling out. But I didn't budge. I turned to my daughter, who stood beside me, pale but steady. Tell them what you told me. Did you ever ask for their version of a sweet 16? She shook her head, voice small but clear. No, I just wanted what we did. That's all I wanted. Silence. Heavy. Shattering. I looked around the table one last time. You crossed a line you can't uncross. From today forward, we're done. No calls. No visits. No more pretending. You made me choose between protecting my daughter and keeping this family together. I chose her. My sister opened her mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to beg. But I raised my hand, cutting her off. If you come near my house again, if you contact her behind my back, if you try one more stunt, this folder goes to the police, the lawyer, and anyone else who'll listen. I'm done being quiet. For the first time, they didn't have a comeback. No manipulation, no guilt trips. Just stunned silence. I took my daughter's hand, turned, and walked out of that house. And as the door shut behind us, I felt something I hadn't in months. Not fear, not anger, freedom.